This video is about the occult movie Nightbreed and its reference to the Nephilim. It was recommended by commenter Dragonslayer. The movie's director also wrote the book that it was based on, titled Cabal. This is the cover for it. The author and director is Clive Barker. He is a British author, playwright, and movie director. It seems obvious to me that the writer-director has occult and biblical knowledge of the Nephilim bloodlines. Most of his books are about the occult. This movie was released in 1990 as a fantasy horror genre. His other writing adapted into films were Hellraiser and Candyman. Clive Barker also wrote Books of Blood, which was a collection of short stories about the afterlife involving highways of the dead that sometimes intersect with the living world. He wrote Weave World, about a magical world hidden inside a tapestry in the attempt to save it from those who seek to destroy it. He wrote The Great and Secret Show, about the conflict between two highly evolved men over the mystical dream sea called quiddity and whether or not it should be tapped into. It says the conflict between the two men spills into the real world in a decades-long feud, distorting reality and affecting the entire human race. He wrote Imagica, about the multiverse and parallel dimensions, exploring the interplay between reality, magic, and the cosmic forces that shape existence. But this movie, Nightbreed, is a cult classic about the others in society. The film tells the origin story of Aaron Boone, who becomes Cabal. Cabal is a messiah for the oppressed and displaced monsters who hide in the city of Midian. And in the movie, Midian is a cemetery located inside a stone circle. You can kind of see it. And then it has an underground city underneath that, founded by Baphomet, that houses the tribes of the moon, which are half-breed demon-type creatures. Midian is definitely a reference to the biblical Midian, linking it to the Nephilim tribes, which I will cover later. In the novel, Boone was inducted into the ranks of the tribes of the moon. Previously, he was human. The tribes of the moon are nightbreeders who can shapeshift to become smoke, fly. They have to live underground because the sun can kill them. They burn up like a vampire, and they are immortal. And they can even change people into being like them by biting them. So Boone, after he gets bitten, develops the ability to shapeshift into a shadowy humanoid creature with increased strength, durability, and reflexes. He gets sharp teeth. He has occult glyphs all over his body. His body can repair itself. And he becomes the god of the tribes of the moon, as the one who would save them from extinction at the hands of the tribes of the sun, which they say are modern-day humans, so he's an Antichrist figure. There's also a direct reference to necromancy through pharmakia and sorcery, because when Boone was a human, before he gets changed, he's being given psychedelic drugs by his psychiatrist, which are causing night terrors, where he has dreams about Midian. The backstory is that Boone went through trauma as a child when his parents were murdered and he witnessed it, which is why he's in the care of this psychiatrist. And then later you find out that the psychiatrist was actually the murderer of his parents, so the inference is that he's been grooming Boone since childhood. The psychiatrist turns out to be a serial killer who pins the murders that he's committing on Boone, and eventually, because of that, the cops kill Boone, but then he resurrects, and he's drawn to Midian, where the rest of the story takes place. In the movie, the tribe of the moon are communicating with statues, which are demon spirits, and you can see that they are the shade types because they have no arms. So they're simulacra, which represents spirit beings, as we learned from the drawings on the Native American petroglyphs. Also, at the beginning, there are petroglyphs, which you see in the credits, and that indicates that these are ancient beings. They have shining eyes, so they're definitely Nephilim, or a Nephilim reference. The commenter linked this movie to the Tuatha De Danann and the tribe of Dan. He said, Tuatha De Danann were a people famed for necromancy. From their time journey to Greece to learn the Mithraic mysteries, then they went to Denmark. Danes are Goths, and Denmark is a reference to the Mark of Dan. They also migrated to Norway, Scandinavia, and then Scotland, forming the Anglo-Saxons. Proponents of British Israelism claim descent from the tribe of Dan, who settled in Denmark and Ireland. The primary characteristics of the tribe of Dan was seafaring, so they spread out over Europe to include Britain. See my video titled The Tribe of Dan. Berserkers are featured in this story, and berserkers in medieval Norse and Germanic folklore were members of unruly warrior gangs that worshipped Odin, the supreme Norse deity, and attached themselves to royal and noble courts as bodyguards. I think the reference to Midian also links this movie to the Tuatha De Danann elven fairy vampire race and the tribe of Dan. You see here on the cover of the book that the figure has reptilian eyes. Tuatha De Danann, according to Gary Wayne, are the elven fairy race that settled in Ireland after 3000 BC. They were the overlords and high kings of the elven fairy and Tuatha bloodlines, a Nephilim race created when the fallen angels slept with women. I think the tribe of Dan was named for the Tuatha De Danann because they had the same pagan practices and likely intermarried with the elven Nephilim bloodlines. Gary Wayne writes that Japheth, Magog dragon bloodlines further intermarried with the Tuatha De Danann and fairy bloodlines of Ireland, Europe, and Scandinavia. Celtic bloodlines also eventually intermarried with the Merovingian dynasty. The snake is used to represent Dan, based on Genesis 49:17. It says, "Let Dan be a serpent by the roadside, a horned viper by the path, that bites the horse's heel, so that the rider tumbles backwards." In the movie Nightbreed, they show an image of a snake that looks very much like the tribe of Dan's on the serpent plate here in Jerusalem. Kind of can't see that there, but it really does look the same, like they're really trying to mimic the tribe of Dan iconography. Revelation 7:4-8 mentions that the people from the 12 tribes of Israel will be sealed. The selection of the 12 tribes does not include the name of Dan. It's been suggested by some biblical scholars that this could be because of their pagan practices. Some propose that the Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan. See my video titled Esau. In the movie, Boone is made to be out as a type of Antichrist figure. It's obvious that the reference to Midian is biblical because, for one, there's a Bible verse that they say towards the end, which I'm going to go over, but also they show the Midian mountains in the movie. These are the Midian mountains. You can kind of see they're really trying to reference that. Regarding the biblical Midian and the Nephilim tribes found there, Midian was on the east shore of the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea, in the Timnah Valley, inhabited by several tribes around 1600 to 1000 BC. The tribes in the Midian area would have been likely Amalekites, Horites, Kenites, and Edomites. Amalekites were a branch of Nephilim who interbred with Esau, Eliphaz, Kenaz, and Amalek. Both the Midianites and Edomites, aka Amalekites, were products of Esau. Eliphaz is the son of Esau, and Ada, Eliph, or Elf is the reference there. Eliphaz, Elf, Eliph married the Horite Timnah, producing Amalek. Amalekites are the bloodlickers, so there's your vampire reference, which is why I think they're represented so frequently in vampire movies. There are hundreds of them, maybe even 1,000, which usually have the same British actors who have roles in other fantasy, horror, sci-fi, and superhero genres because they channel their ancestors and their gods that way. And the same thing happened with this movie. And the author was British. The area of the Timnah Valley contains copper deposits that were mined, including by the Egyptians during the reign of Pharaoh Seti at the end of the 14th century BC. There are Midianite connections to metallurgy at Timna Valley based on Midianite ceramic ware that was discovered there. So there's your connection to metallurgy and the craftsmith with Freemasonry, which we can read in the Book of Enoch was taught by the fallen. We see that reference to metallurgy and the craft in the Lord of the Rings and associated various other literature. In this movie, there is a police officer named Cain who's obsessed with weapons. Midianites were pantheistic, worshipping Baal, Peor, Astaroth, and other gods. There's an Egyptian temple of Hathor located at Timna where offerings were made, and there are Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions including those of Seti and Ramses. A small bronze snake with a gilded head also was discovered there. In Numbers 31, in the regions of Moab and Midian, Israelites had a war against the Midianites, commanded by Moses. They killed the men and the non-virgin women, including their 5 kings and Balaam, and burnt their settlements. I think they left the virginal women because there was no chance they could be carrying Nephilim children, and that would explain that. The psychiatrist has a pyramid on his desk. He also has monster masks on the wall in his office, and he makes reference that the monsters in Midian were incorporated into Boone's private mythology. Boone has stained glass windows in his apartment, and there's also Gothic cathedral underground in Midian in the tabernacle. Like I was saying, there is nothing Christian about Gothic cathedrals ever. It's the opposite. In the movie, they say they're warming up for the apocalypse over at Midian. They bring this priest with them, getting ready for this war here with the policeman and the psychiatrist. And he quotes from the Bible, Numbers 31:3. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm yourselves for war, and let them go and take vengeance for the Lord on Midian." And so they burned with fire all the cities where they dwelt and killed the kings of Midian, both man and beast. So there's a big fight between the humans and the night breeders at the end, and they write it so that you're somewhat sympathetic with the night breeders. And then Boone leads them in the war as a type of Antichrist figure and as part of a prophecy, saying that if they want to survive, they must fight, and they can't hide anymore. So in the end, Baphomet tells Boone that he's no longer Boone, he's now Cabal. And Cabal comes from the word Kabbalah, referring to a Jewish tradition of interpreting texts. Thanks for listening.